On August 8th, 2021, Emma Chamberlain posted an update to the community tab on YouTube. Written to her then 10.4 million subscribers, Emma announced that she was taking a hiatus from her channel. Quote, "Taking a few more weeks off to think. I need to take my own advice on taking a break when it's needed. This isn't a negative thing though. I'm thinking a lot about how I can evolve and make things that truly excite me. I haven't taken a step back in a long time to ask myself what that means. I love and appreciate you, and I will see you soon." Those few more weeks off soon turned into half a year of radio silence from Emma on YouTube. The creator was only 20 years old at the time and had already achieved fame and fortune from her online career, which she started in 2016 while still at high school. Though Emma's success was built off sharing bits of her personal life through her vlogs and podcast, this hiatus marked a noticeable change in her content. Her videos featured more visual storytelling, less personal updates, and she felt more guarded than throughout her earlier career. Emma had made the conscious decision to become more private online, a choice that many other young people, creators or not, have opted for in recent years. Because unlike their millennial counterparts, Gen Z has experienced the perils of oversharing on social media since before they were teenagers. They understand the risks associated with being constantly surveilled online, and they find the constant attention-seeking behavior required to build an online following, quite frankly, embarrassing. After growing up in a media space plagued by cancel culture, misinformation, and virtually no opportunity for anonymity, Gen Z is replacing performance for privacy. But what, if anything, does Gen Z's pursuit of privacy mean then for the future of the creator economy? From Centennial World, I'm Lauren Meisner, and this is Infinite Scroll, a podcast about internet culture, the creator economy, and how social media is shaping Gen Z. Welcome back to Infinite Scroll, everyone. All right, so I have a little update. I am feeling quite ill this week. I'm very under the weather. So this is actually an updated encore episode from season 3, where Jordy and I explored why Gen Z is more private online than other generations and what this means for the future of social media. So we've never done an encore or like a rerun before. I know a lot of podcasts that I listen to do this quite often, I guess when they have a week off or if they just need some extra time to prep. We've never done it, so I hope that those of you, especially the ones that found us last year and maybe haven't listened to our back catalog yet, hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you learn something and you enjoy kind of the OG vibes with Jordy. Now, this episode was also recorded prior to us filming everything for YouTube. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you'll still be able to listen to the full episode, but you just won't see myself or Jordy talking. And in terms of some updates, I wanted to share a couple little things for you guys this week. So the first big thing that's happening is Centennial World, the media brand that the podcast sits under. We have made the decision to cease publishing on Instagram, which is a really wild decision as a publisher. It feels almost like illegal to do as a publisher, but there was a few reasons for that. The first is that Meta, I'm sure if you guys are in the social space, you would have, seen this or heard about this, but Meta has made the decision to stop, or I guess start deprioritizing news and like political content, quote unquote, but what qualifies as political content is very murky and it's quite unclear. And a lot of the stuff that we cover when it comes to creators, like even, our topic last week on Tradwives, that could be considered quote unquote political. So, that was kind of part of the decision for sure. That was a recent development that Meta decided to make. But I would say the bigger reason why we decided to do this is just because the Instagram, like the Centennial World Instagram, not the Infinite Scroll podcast Instagram, but the Centennial World Instagram, it has been like my cross to bear for the last 4 years since we launched. Content is kind of my job, and I just could not figure it out. I tried so many different things. The things that I would post on there, if I posted on any other platform, Pinterest or TikTok or whatever, they would do so well on those other platforms. It never did well on Instagram at all. Growing the Instagram was so difficult. It felt like impossible. And I think I just had to come to terms with the fact that the content that we're creating is not super conducive to Instagram. Now, maybe if we had launched the business in Instagram's heyday, like 2015, 2016, we would have lots of followers naturally because of that. But when it comes to analyzing the creator economy and internet culture topics and things like that, people like to absorb that or like to consume that on TikTok. They like to consume it on YouTube and in podcast format and even newsletter. Like every other platform, including our site, like every platform that we have is consistently growing and quite successful. And the Instagram just was not. So I actually worked with a business consultant at the beginning of the year. And that was one of his first pieces of advice to me was, identify the places in the business that you are spending time and energy and thus money that are not working. And he literally said to me, if you have been working on the Instagram account for 4 years, it's not growing. It has never grown. You've never monetized it. And it's not like you're just seeing no results there. Like, why are you beating a dead horse? Like, why are you still trying this? And that was in January. So it took me a few months to really grapple with the fact that, like, as a publisher, maybe we shouldn't necessarily focus on Instagram. But that was our decision. So I pulled the plug on our Instagram account earlier this week. It still exists. And we've posted a few tiles to explain why our Instagram is bare, who we are, where you can actually find us, that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if it will stay like that forever. I have thought maybe I should make it like a brand portfolio, almost kind of like a LinkedIn, almost like, like share snippets from the coach event, for example, that you guys came to, share examples of different campaigns we're working on. When I speak on panels on behalf of the brand, share that, like just those kinds of things. I thought maybe we could do that as like a snapshot of the brand. But for now, with the limited time and resources that I have at the moment, I'm just going to keep it as is. So that was a pretty big decision. I know some of you guys like the business updates. Some of you don't really care, but for those that do. But this ties in to my next update. I don't want to necessarily give it away, but in the tiles that I posted on Instagram, sharing that we're no longer publishing on Instagram and kind of explaining who we are, I left a little Easter egg. And only so far, one of you has at least, maybe more of you have seen it, but one of you has reached out to say, I found the Easter egg. I cannot believe it. So go take a look. That's a little hint for you guys on what's to come next for this podcast. Okay, so as always, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. It means so much to me. It helps me grow. It keeps me going. Please sign up to our newsletter, which is called Infinite Scroll. On Wednesdays, we send out a commentary article about a trend, creator, drama, or news. And on Fridays, we round up the 5 biggest think pieces about internet culture on the internet that week. And also join our Geneva group called Infinite Scroll, where you can chat with other people who are also obsessed with internet culture and drama and tea and all of that. And you can talk to me. All right, here are some reviews that we got this week. I love reading these out. So Hottie XOX Rach said, I absolutely loved this episode. So informative, but in a fun way, about the Trad Wife episode. So thank you so much, Rach. Means so much. She said that on Spotify. Big Boy Becky on YouTube says, I particularly love this episode because it's a very informative video, both politically and socially. I personally find making food from scratch, especially for your kids, such an obviously performative and unrealistic act, but so many are eating it up. It's just not feasible. But then again, they are sellers of an unattainable and inherently racist lifestyle, so it makes sense that it appears comical from the outside. Thank you for continuing Infinite Scroll. Looking forward to your future plans. Thank you. And then Hannah said in my DMs, OG listener Hannah, she said, Lauren, Dash and I absolutely loved this week's podcast. Such a fascinating topic and so well presented. As always, I audibly gasped and scared the dog a few times. Can't wait for more. Dash is her dog. Thank you, Hannah. So as I said, this is a rerun that has been re-edited for you guys from season 3 while I'm kind of recovering from being, under the weather, overwhelmed, exhausted, needing a bit of a break this week. But I will be back next week with a brand new topic, a brand new episode. Can't wait to chat with you guys then. So, without further ado, I hope you like the episode. So, we are going to be talking about the concept of like privacy online and why we're seeing this shift in Gen Z away from being super public and open online to seeking privacy and anonymity. I'm sorry, I struggle with that word online.
It gives me an anemone, like that.
What was that word that I couldn't say when we did the Lebrance evangelical?
Yeah, yeah, you got
Yeah,
it first time.
yeah, I
Just
got it
saying.
then.
It's because it wasn't, like, over and over and over again, like, you get in your head about it.
Yes, 100%. So, this week we're going to be pulling from two different articles that we think really facilitate an interesting conversation around this. And, there's obviously a lot of discussion that's starting about this. So, the first one is written by Caitlin Tiffany at The Atlantic. The piece is called The Personal Brand is Dead.
So the piece explores how for millennials, being famous online was really cool. So millennials are the first generation of people to become like genuine influencers and make enough money to turn it into a full-time job. So they were essentially seen, like the early days of influencers were seen as trailblazers. Like they basically carved out this entire new career for themselves. However, as people have become more accustomed to the concept of an influencer, and we've seen the process and expectations evolve, like often for the worst, Gen Z are rebelling against this idea and instead almost find having a large social media presence embarrassing. I find that I find that in general embarrassing because interesting because I was saying to Courtney, I think that she didn't want to watch The Summer I Turned Pretty on Amazon Prime because her friend told her that it was like cringy.
I haven't seen it.
But, like, that's real life, you know? Like I said this the other week, like, I just think it's so funny that we're just so used to everything being so scripted, and that's not how real life actually is. Like, when you're 16, which is what the age of the people in The Summer I Turned Pretty, like, that is real life, that everything feels a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, and you don't actually know, like, what you're doing. You're just, like, fumbling around. So I feel like Gen Z thinks so much is embarrassing, which I think is hilarious.
Did you ever watch the show Love?
No.
Gillian Flynn. Is that her? No, that's an author. Gillian, oh, something, but she's in Community. But it's like that. It's like you watch it and it's about like, yeah, like a couple that kind of finds love, but it's like, it's so awkward, but it's so real. Like it's so raw. And like that's what it's like when you first kind of meet someone and start dating them or start kind of one of you is into each other and the other's not like, and it's like all those cringy moments that you want to die. And then you think of the flip side, like Gossip Girl, which is like the complete opposite. It's like they're supposed to be what, like 15, 16, and they're like so witty, so mature, so polished. And you're just like, this is so unrealistic, but it's also so good.
Yeah, but you don't know that if that's all the media you're consuming is that same kind of really polished, scripted content, that it seems like really jarring to see the awkward real life version. But it's more realistic, you know? So Caitlin Tiffany explains that this like move away from having large social media followings is evident in like a resurgence of apps like Tumblr and Discord, which obviously allows for like anonymous voice and text conversations and like crafting, like how Tumblr works. You're like crafting your personal brand, but in a way that like nobody knows who you are. So she explains that like crafting a cohesive, persistent personal brand, which is something millennials were really excited to do. And I feel like part of the appeal was like competing to who could create the best personal brand, who could show like who could have the best life and like represent that in the best way. So now that seems like something it seems like exhausting to Gen Z. As a result, it seems like something they're like not willing to participate in. They don't want to curate this image of their life. They're like, I'm tired.
Well, yeah, like it's literally so much work to try and have a personal brand, especially if you're just a regular person. Like, I feel like the concept of a personal brand and how like everybody has to have a personal brand online because obviously we all have social media and whatever. Like, that was a concept that I feel like was fed to us by these like productivity gurus and like coaches. And this was like fed to millennials. And I mean, we were again, like we've talked about this so many times, but like the first generation, obviously, that grew up with like social media, the first generation on social media, really like as a generation. So we did think like it was important to have this kind of really polished, cohesive personal brand. But I just think for Gen Z, they see that they don't necessarily need that. There's already been some kind of trial and error. It's exhausting. The idea of like Gen Z like ditching the personal brand, like it totally tracks with how they see work in general, right? Like they don't subscribe to like this romanticization of labor the way that millennials do. They don't subscribe to like hustle culture. So to them, they're like, why would I turn my personal social media that I use to like connect with my friends and like follow the things that I like into work if I don't even work in this space? Like if I'm not trying to be
That's so true.
famous.
It's so interesting how we were told that. And I still very much subscribe to this mentality that my like Instagram is a resume almost. And I know it's different in creative industries. It's like exacerbated a little bit as well. But that is like what you're putting out to the world. And because we're so like interconnected now, you know, like we're doing work trips to the US and between Canada and Australia and all this stuff, it's like this is potentially how you get new business because people find you like intriguing or put together or like intelligent. Like these are all the kind of things that we're trying to put out like through our tiny like little grid on an app on our phone. Like, are we okay?
But then I think about like when I think about, yeah, that concept of like us using social media as a resume, it is different as like a business owner, but still it's very much like something that our generation does. But then I think about when we're hiring people and we hire Gen Z. Like we have never hired anybody that wasn't Gen Z so far. If I look them up on Instagram and they're private, like I don't even think about it. I'm like, okay, what, like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't like impact my decision. Like sometimes I don't even look at somebody's Instagram because I'm just looking at their resume and their writing samples or whatever. Like I do think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves with this, and it's not as big of a deal as like our parents told us it would be.
Well, that's the thing. At the beginning, I was going through high school, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before. We were having training courses by internet experts to not put like drunk photos of ourselves on MySpace or Facebook, because then by the time you want to get a job, like however many years later, like they could easily resurface and the police can only do. We were literally scared half to death by people coming in and saying the police can't remove those images because once you've put it there, they've probably been circulated like thousands of times that will live online forever. Like the police can only do so much. Like obviously there's a sliding scale of what's embarrassing enough that you would like go to the police and have removed, and the whole revenge porn aspect is like a whole other part of it. But I do think that we were scared so much into like the way that we present online that it's like affected and become a thread through like every single thing we do now. So Caitlin Tiffany says in her Atlantic piece, it seems like Gen Z is getting really tired of presentation culture, as you might call it. So Zeke, a 21-year-old biologist and frequent Discord chatter, told her the idea that everything you do has to be a representation of your personal identity is just like crazy to them. And I agree with what you said as far as the gap. Gen Z have a better separation between work and home life. Like they're not looking for them to be connected. They want to go to work and then come home. Like I think growing up in a pandemic, their formative years have really shifted their expectation of what's worth their energy because of the strain on their mental health over the last few years between like world events and social media. They do really want this separation. And I think if you treat social media as an extension of work, then it feels like work. The writer credits the trend of like anonymity and this move away from personal brand as a response to a few things. So the first being security concerns, which we kind of touched on. So this was really exacerbated during the Black Lives Matter protests. Like lots of young people downloaded Signal, an encrypted messaging app, which I understand to be like WhatsApp. I don't really know the difference between Signal and WhatsApp, but it is encrypted, so it's downloaded. They downloaded it and communicated via Signal to avoid surveillance. And then K-pop fans derailing the Trump rally was another example of anonymous users banding together to like instigate social change. But that did feel like something that felt like a moment that was really heated and potentially dangerous. So the anonymity for something like that was really important. And then other activists were sharing tools to blur protesters' faces in Instagram stories. So I think we saw this with the January 6th Capitol riots, how social media was utilized like in a negative way. It was utilized as a planning and organizational tool for people with a shared ethos to connect and then like organize to be in the same place in the same time. And it really kind of like riled people up together and helped them organize the riots in the first place. But then it became a tool for police to track down the people who were involved. So heaps of people bragged about it on social media. They got found. Lots of people were identified from like social media stories, like Instagram stories, and Facebook stories. And then the police were able to track them down through that. So we saw like kind of both sides of the security issues in like a heated political circumstance like that. Another reason she credits is the rise of Web3 and crypto culture. So the premise of crypto obviously is that transactions can be made online without the exchange of personally identifying information. And then the rise of NFTs too have seen people like replacing their profile pictures with cartoons and like images that aren't themselves. This personally feels really jarring to me, and I feel like it's not sustainable because like to buy a house or get a loan or buy a car, like you need to show your identity and pay slips and proof of funds, and it has to be tied to your like actual in real life personal identity. So I feel like this reason for anonymity can't coexist with real life. Like it feels like very Gen Z and futuristic, but I don't know. Maybe I don't see the vision. I feel like I'm talking like a boomer, but like it almost has to exist in isolation. Like you can't have grown up things and live a grown up life and exist anonymously and live through crypto, you know?
I know. I really wish Sean was here so he could just like have a point, because I just know he would be like, well, this is why, or like, or he would agree with you and have an explanation. But because I don't understand it well enough either. But like Christine Quinn has that company where you can buy houses with crypto. You can't take out a mortgage with crypto. So she is selling houses, I'm assuming, outright. Or what I was thinking is, would it be her company buying houses like with real money and then she is selling them for crypto?
Possibly.
My understanding of Web3 and the concept of crypto and stuff is so that it's like decentralized, right? So that it's like we take the power out of like the hands of like the few elite in the world, like the banks and the government and whatever, regulating how we spend our money and how much things cost and whatever. And it's like the power is back in your hands because everything is anonymous and there's no way to trace it.
So maybe at the end of the day, like you'll be buying, like Christine will be brokering between me wanting to sell my house and get paid in crypto to somebody that wants to pay in crypto. So she's finding those two people and is connecting them. And then I guess you just have a contract drawn up that specifies that. So it is like possible, I suppose. It's just like kind of finding a new guard that like understands it and is willing to engage in a contract of like that kind.
I guess the concept is that in like, whatever 20 years, you'll just have your wallet, like your crypto wallet, and that'll be like another bank account. And you'll be able to buy lots of things online for crypto. And it might be possibly way cheaper than, real money or whatever, because it's all decentralized. I don't know. We're very not well versed in this, guys. So I'm sorry if this is bothering you.
I actually try quite hard. I really struggle. I do feel like we need to do like a training session in Web3.
I need somebody to conduct a training session in Web3. Like, what the fuck? Like, I consume so much content about like internet culture, and same with you, like tech developments and everything, and I still just like cannot.
So if any of our listeners are experts in Web3, hit us up. We need some explainers. Okay, so the third reason that Caitlin Tiffany references in the Atlantic piece for this move towards anonymity is nostalgia. So she explains Discord is an example of this and suggests a nostalgia amongst Gen Z for the like forum culture that existed mostly before they were born. So Tumblr is the same. She says Tumblr was at its peak just before the era of the influencer, and that's the feeling that Gen Z are chasing. They're chasing this time like before the influencer existed, and these platforms let people be known for their like point of view or what they can bring to say a roundtable discussion rather than like their face or even their personality, which is what Instagram and TikTok function around.
Yeah, like that makes sense. I mean, my favorite corner of the internet, like my favorite place to be on the internet is, this is gonna like straight up make me sound like a boomer. Speaking of sounding like a boomer, is being in my Facebook groups. Because they are like Discord servers basically for like the podcasts that I listen to. And that's like the only, I'm in like dog spotting, which like everybody is in dog spotting. And then I'm in like all the different Facebook groups for my favorite podcasts. And like, I can't help that they're on Facebook. Okay. It's like if you're in our Facebook group, you can't help that we chose Facebook instead of Discord, okay? So, like, don't shame me. But it's, like, the best place to be because it's just this, like, collective of people that have this, like, shared interest, and I know in the article when she was interviewing Gen Z who are, like, really into Discord servers, it's the same thing. It's, like, it's so chill. It's, like, people will post, like, something about pop culture and be like, "What's your opinion on this?" Or, like, let's talk about this. And I just love to read everybody's opinions. And it's just so calm and chill. And there's not all these like weird assumptions and things taken out of context the same way if you had posted that on Twitter, for example.
So the second piece that we're going to talk about is written by our writer Annabelle, and it's called The Pursuit for Privacy. What does anonymity mean online mean for Gen Z? So Annabelle's justification is slightly different for why Gen Z prioritizes anonymity so highly. She says it partly comes down to the fact that Gen Z content creators are acting as role models and they're taking a step back from their social media presences and careers and influencing their young audiences to do the same. So Annabelle's examples are Best Dressed, Joanna Cedia, and even Emma Chamberlain until recently. They've all left their social media platforms, taken a step back at what seems to be the height of their careers. So a YouTube creator, Nicole Raffi, she explains how influencers that have risen from being quote unquote authentic are now seeing this conflict with their privacy. So every part of the viral space becomes commodified. And because of this, something as simple as giving creators a video view or using their discount code breeds a sense of entitlement among viewers. So Nicole says that we detach creators, especially women, from being human beings. They owe us something, especially if we have helped them build their success. If we gave them that, they owe us something in return. So people, as a result, expect this unfiltered access to the personal lives of these creators. But because young people have grown up from the beginning watching people build their personal brand, it's like they're only just discovering how good it feels to be no one in particular or to try on different identities. Caitlin writes for The Atlantic. So huge viral creators like Emma Chamberlain are included in this. Like, she's been building a personal brand for so long that she actually doesn't know what it's like not to be tied to the version of herself that she's created on the internet.
What's interesting about this, about what Nicole said, about how like we detach creators from being human beings and we feel like they owe us something because we've given them their careers. Like, I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago, and it was two pretty big influencers talking about a cancellation. They didn't name the name, but like I would bet so much money that they were talking about Tanks. They were talking about how they were messaging her to say, like, you know, you'll get through this, whatever. They said that this person, I think it's Tanks, but it was definitely not confirmed, but whoever it was, responded to one of them and said, like, I'm having a really hard time because I've given these people everything and look what they've done to me. And I thought, and they just said this in like a throwaway, like amongst their conversation, but it was so interesting to me that this influencer like sees it that way, that they see it as the reverse. Like, I have given you all of me and now you've turned on me. And it's like we feel the same. We feel like we have given, as viewers, like we have given you everything. We've given you our time, our energy, our support, our money, like all of these things. It's so interesting how at the end of the day, both people feel the exact same way and it's such a transaction, but there's still so much emotion involved in it.
100%. It's like neither can quite conflate how the other side feels, but they think that they understand. So it does make complete sense that like influencers or creators like Emma Chamberlain that have been doing this for literally her whole adult life, for a lot of her teenage life too. So at this point, people wanting to be anonymous or take a step back from social media is merely mimicking, whether they realize it or not. They're just like reacting to what their favorite creators are doing, and this shift that they've seen their creators, like this realization moment for them and then this step down moment. And we don't get to see if they're happy or not, but you like assume that they're happier once they've left the internet. Like, that was the point. Otherwise they'd come back, right?
I mean, that's so true with everything. Like, look at how trends go on even like aesthetics with Instagram. It used to be like having overly like Lightroom preset grids were like super in. And then it was like having no presets, normal grids. And now it's like having dark grids. I am so
Mhm.
tired of the dark aesthetic. I don't want to see a practically pitch black photo of you in Tuscany. I want to see the colors if you are in Tuscany. I want to see the yellows and the blues and the greens. Like, what is with this like dim light shit?
100%. 100%. So, what Annabelle brings up that's really important to look at is the dark side of anonymity on social media. So, we've spoken about kind of like all the reasons that Gen Z want to be anonymous and why that they feel like it's an issue that they've had to do this. But she also explains that while privacy comes with, freedom, flexibility, and anonymity, it also encourages trolls and misinformation to spread. Users who hide behind faceless profiles feel a disconnect between them as people and their online persona. And because of this, a sense of anarchy has come to dominate social media platforms. And as a result, it creates a really dangerous environment. So the fact that we have become so accustomed to seeing an onslaught of hate in any particular comment section is like a really fucked up adjustment that we're just like, what's that? That TikTok that's going around being like, what is something that's a scam? It's been ingrained in you that like it's not a scam. This is one of them. The fact that anytime we go online, we can expect to see like probably 50% love, but 50% hate.
It's not even a custom, it's like expected.
Yeah, completely. So this is obviously particularly prevalent with TikTok because as TikTok has democratized viral stardom, like anyone can go viral, when it happens accidentally, but Gen Z want to stay anonymous, it can lead to situations like couch guy that end up really harmful to those on the receiving end. And it also really plays into like a mob mentality. And that's what we've spoken about quite often is that when a faceless, nameless user makes a point, it then like validates everyone else that has same like harmful commentary to then like speak up or get behind like that point of view. And I thought it was really interesting when you brought up the Facebook group thing that you said everyone's pop culture commentary was really interesting and everyone was like engaged, but it was like a pleasant environment. That's because people have their names and their profiles attached. And obviously that's not always the case with Facebook, but I feel like that is where there's a massive gap between the way people engage on Facebook and the way that people engage on TikTok.
And there is consequences in these communities. Like if you are being like bullying or sending hate or being even just like, communicating in like a really not civil way, like you'll just be kicked out. And so it's like if you really value being part of this group and in this community and whatever, like you're going to be respectful and have like respectful debate the same way that like, you would hope if you were standing in front of somebody who had a difference of opinion to you, you wouldn't be screaming in their face telling them that they should go kill themselves. I think it is good for Gen Z to take as much of their personal information offline as possible. I just think right now the internet is like not a very safe place. I think there's like a lot of doxing going on. There's like so much cyberbullying. And I don't know if you've seen that meme that's like, how do mofos get cyberbullied? Like just log off, bro. But like you also can't really get cyberbullied if people don't know who you are because they're not actually bullying you.
Yes, but I think that's also kind of where the problem is that because people don't actually have to like stand behind the messaging that they're putting out, they like say all this outrageous stuff that would never fly in real life. Like it's the same point as like you wouldn't go up to somebody and say you should drink bleach to cure COVID, something like that. But then when you're online and you don't have a name attached, like if you believe that, you can spread that message without actually having it like attached to you at all. So I feel like people are more likely to say the like darkest things that they really mean.
Yes, I guess so. I guess how I'm like approaching it in my thoughts is like in terms of Gen Z's like mental health, if more people become anonymous, like if Gen Z becomes more and more anonymous and like future generations start becoming more and more private because they see how millennials we absolutely just fucked everything up for ourselves, there will be less people to attack. And I think people will start to lead their lives more and more offline, which is like just good in general.
I think you're right. I think the point that you made about the Facebook groups and how it's a privilege to be a part of that community. So you have to abide by the rules and regulations and moderation that's in place. And I think apps like Geneva that I just wrote about, so it's like a chat, it's basically combined the chat functions of every other app and put it in one place. And then you can join like a Facebook group esque groups. So there were all these groups, like I joined like Gen Z Girl Gang, and you can join like female founder groups. So it's kind of taking the premise of Facebook groups and like kind of building a community around like a shared interest. And that's the priority more so even than like connecting with your friends, because your friends you would just like text. So you have that direct line to your friends, and then you have like a moderated community that you feel like it's a privilege to be a part of and is really like closely monitored as far as the kind of things you say. So maybe like that's the direction of social media, that there will be nothing in the middle where people, this kind of like trolling and misinformation and like horrible hate speech actually like comes to exist.
Well, I was telling Sean about Be Real because obviously I was doing it. Like, I only just got it when we started the vacation. And then he was like, "So, how do you grow a following?" And I was like, "You don't. That's the point. Like, it's just your friends. Like, it's all about like connecting with people. And like, maybe they will eventually roll out different like features for that and stuff. But it reminds me more of like Snapchat, where it's just like about connecting with the people that you know or the things that you care about and whatever. And like, I do think that is 100% the future of social media. I think it is tough because like the influencer industry is just so big now. Like, I don't think we can ever go backwards, but it'll be interesting to see if future generations even download Instagram, for example, you know, or if they just do things like Be Real.
It does feel like a hot take, but all the existing influencers will continue to exist, and they'll live out and grow their careers as they would as they age, but we might not be seeing many new influencers from Instagram kind of coming through. Like there will be kind of an age cutoff of people that decided they weren't interested in building a following on that platform. But I think it will manifest in different ways, because it's interesting that they're doing social media or like content creator courses now at universities and stuff like that. And there was this mentality for a really long time that everyone wants to be an influencer. And I think that kind of premise has existed for long enough that we're realizing that isn't actually the case.
No, I agree. And I think Gen Z is too smart, and just future generations will just be too smart. They'll see the downsides to it. I think one of the biggest reasons why Gen Z is pursuing privacy is because of the way that online culture functions at the moment. I think that plays a much bigger role in why they are pursuing privacy rather than, to them it's just like trying to be cool, or it's like the new trendy thing that their favorite influencers are doing. Because if you think about it, this kind of shift in social media and influencer culture started happening around like 2020. And 2020 was like literally such an influential year. And like, I know that people talk about it, but I think it's a much, like, in terms of how the online world functions and the viral space functions, I don't think we give this one year enough credit, if that makes sense. Like, it completely changed life online. Like, and it changed how regular internet users showed up online. It changed how we expect influencers and celebrities to show up online. Because, like, before 2020, like, obviously cancel culture and accountability culture and all of that existed, but it wasn't even close to the magnitude that it is now. And I just think that year in particular was this like perfect storm between what happened to George Floyd and BLM, the Trump election, obviously COVID, and then TikTok blowing up at the same time. It was like this perfect storm, and it felt like this pressure cooker of a time where like people all around the world felt like life was literally the worst it had ever been. And then like 2 years later, now we sit here and it's like things haven't gotten really any better. Like, a lot of people feel like things have actually just kept getting worse, especially if you live in America. So I think 2020 was like this pivotal year where like everyone felt so completely out of control in their lives, and we haven't really regained like any of that control since. And like, I would theorize that this majorly seeped into how people showed up online, and it forever changed the internet. Because if you are somebody and like you're able to call someone out for something that you think is wrong, and you're getting like tangible results from it, where people like jump on board, they validate your anger, they help you create change, whether that's like someone deleting a video, making an apology, or like ending their career, like that type of situation gives people back that sense of control that we feel like we've completely lost since 2020. And I feel like that's a sense of control that a lot of people don't feel like they have in the external world now. And like, obviously, this shift in how like regular internet users now engage online has had a major impact on influencers and creators and what they are now willing to share, because we genuinely do not give people a lot of grace. We rarely give anyone like the benefit of the doubt. And there's this snowball effect that like one single person taking issue with something you said or did, and it will just snowball, like you said, like mob mentality in a way that it just like never used to. Nobody gives anybody the benefit of the doubt anymore.
Yeah, it truly is, like, bad for both sides. I mean, only bad in a sense that it's become so extreme. Like, people have gotten meaner because they feel like their opinion, regardless of what it is, will be validated, whether they're anonymous or not, but it's easier when they're anonymous, and it's bad for influencers because the expectation has changed and it shifted, like you said, basically overnight in this pressure cooker over a year where they'd grown their accounts or their followings in a completely different social and political climate. So it's saying that they didn't sign up for this feels like a bit of a like band-aid statement, but I truly feel like so many influencers and creators didn't sign up for the way, like how volatile the internet is now and how enraged and exhausted everyone is. And I think the response to that, like we said, in most cases is just for people to log the fuck off, to not be online for their own mental health, for the creators themselves, but also for us. It's like when you, as a user, like when you're looking at, say the Roe v. Wade Twitter thread, like that is the most depressing place to be. But there's also something drawing you in that you cannot help but to continue to read and to spiral out of control. And so is it not a healthy option to like not engage at all?
I think the pendulum is going to have to swing back at some point. Like, we really can't keep going on with like how angry and volatile things are online. Like, it always sounds like influencers are complaining about like cancel culture and stuff, but like honestly, if you are online at all, which I'm assuming most of you guys that listen to this podcast are, like, and if you are on like Twitter and TikTok, like, you know how bad it is, like, for people with any type of platform, let alone people without a platform, you know? So I don't know. I think things will have to swing back, and they already are starting to. Like, there's already people starting to have conversations around, like you said, like logging off, go touch grass. This is not like, it's real life, but it's also not. But I think the last few years will have a like a lasting permanent change on the internet 100%. Even though I do think that the pendulum will swing back and things hopefully will kind of equalize a bit at some point. Like, I think we can't really erase how hyper aware we all are now. Like, when I hear somebody say something in a conversation, like one of my friends or something, I immediately think about like how Twitter would take that statement instead of like how I feel about it. You know, it's like, that's not healthy. Like, that's not good. And like a lot of people talk about how like if they're very online, they like self-censor, or they like over contextualize things before they tweet or before they make a statement because they don't want anything to be taken the wrong way and things like that. It's like, that's not how conversation used to be, and it shouldn't be how it always is.
Yeah, it's been taken completely out of proportion to what a normal it was used to be a way to connect with people online and like find community, not having the same conversation you would have with a friend, but instead you're having it with a million screaming people.
Who are angry at each other
But no one knows why.
and are often on the same side.
Oh my god, I completely agree. Do you have any concluding points?
I do think future generations will, as a whole, choose to be more private, for sure, for sure. I think they've seen the mistakes that millennials made, and it's just not worth it.
And that millennials that have been successful online are embarrassing and they don't want a bar of that.
It's also like impossible to do that anymore. You know, it's impossible to just become like an Instagram influencer. It's so hard to become a YouTuber.
Yeah, like the Charlies and Addisons, this tiny tier of people that did become popular because they got on TikTok at the right time, right place, right time. That will not happen again until we have the next TikTok come along. But even then, like, will it be received the same way? Because this shift will be 5 years further down the track and people might not be like ready to engage in the same way anyway. So maybe Charlie and Addison will be the last real influencers that we've seen grow to this kind of level, the last real creators we will see grow to this level of influence like ever again, realistically.
Oh my
Huge
God.
call.
That's a huge call. Infinite Scroll is a podcast written, produced, edited, and presented by me, Lauren Meisner, for Centennial World. Additional research and reporting this week was by Annabelle Ben-David. Thank you so much for listening. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.